The first thing I heard that Christmas evening wasn't the sound of laughter, music, or anyone wishing each other Merry Christmas. It was the scrape of chairs, the clatter of plates, and the strange heaviness that always settled in the air whenever I walked into the room. I felt it before anyone even looked at me, like I had stepped into a space where I didn't fully belong. And deep down, I already knew this Christmas dinner, just like every other one before it, wouldn't be warm or magical. Still, I tried to keep my hopes up. I told myself maybe this year will be different. Maybe things will be calmer. But I had no idea just how wrong I was. The dining room was glowing with soft yellow lights wrapped around the windows. A small Christmas tree flickered in the corner, and the table was set beautifully, red napkins, polished forks, and a big roasted turkey sitting right in the center. My dad was carving it quietly, avoiding eye contact with everyone, especially with me. My stepmother, Denise, was moving around quickly, fixing bowls and rearranging dishes even though everything was already perfect. She was dressed in her usual fancy holiday outfit, her hair perfectly curled, her earrings sparkling like she wanted everyone to notice them before noticing her. My younger stepbrother, Marcus, was on his phone, not bothering to hide the fact that he didn't care about anyone else being there. The twins, Eva and Aaron, whispered and giggled to each other like always, throwing glances at me as if I had walked in wearing something strange. And there was me, trying to sit quietly, trying to blend in, trying not to breathe too loud or take up too much space. It was our blended family Christmas, as my dad liked to call it, but the truth was nothing about us felt blended. It felt more like I was the extra piece that didn't fit anywhere. Still, I sat down gently, hoping maybe if I didn't draw attention to myself, the night would pass peacefully. My dad gave me a small smile, the kind that tried to say hang in there, but even he didn't have the courage to speak up. Denise noticed him looking at me and immediately narrowed her eyes like my existence had ruined her holiday plans. I could already feel her irritation rising like steam. I picked up my fork and quietly reached for a small spoon of mashed potatoes. That's it. Just one spoon. I wasn't trying to take more than anyone else, and I wasn't hungry enough to pile my plate high. I just wanted to look like I was part of the family, even if I didn't feel like it. But somehow, even that little action bothered her. "Oh," Denise said loudly, her voice sharp enough to cut through the soft Christmas music playing in the background. "Look who finally decided to show some interest in family dinner." Everyone turned to look at me. My hand froze midair. I felt my throat tighten, but I forced a polite smile. "I've always been interested," I said softly. Her lips curled up like she didn't believe a word I said. "Right. Of course you have." Dad cleared his throat. "Denise, it's Christmas. Let's just." She held up her hand and stopped him, not even looking in his direction. "No, I'm tired of pretending everything is fine. Every year we do the same thing. I work all day to make this dinner special, and some people," she glanced at me again, "think they can just show up and contribute nothing." I stared at my plate, trying not to react. I had helped. I cleaned the living room, set up the chairs, even vacuumed the hallway because she asked me to. But I didn't say any of that out loud. I knew better. In this house, defending myself only made things worse. She kept going. "Honestly, it's like talking to a wall. You always sit there with that blank face like you're doing us a favor by being here." I swallowed hard. The twins exchanged glances, half amused. Marcus smirked at his phone. Dad tried again. "Let's just eat." But Denise was already raising her voice, the frustration pouring out of her like she had been waiting for this moment. "You know what? I'm just going to say it. You're a waste of space. You bring nothing to this family. Absolutely nothing." The room went dead silent. Even the music suddenly felt too loud, like it didn't belong in this moment. My dad froze with the knife still in his hand. The twins stopped breathing. Marcus finally lifted his eyes from his phone. "And me?" I felt something inside me crack. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a small glass heart falling on a soft surface. But instead of crying or running away or shouting back, I smiled. It wasn't a bright smile. It wasn't a sarcastic smile. It was just calm. A gentle curve of the lips that even I didn't understand at first. A smile that didn't match the situation at all. A smile that seemed to confuse the entire table. Denise's face twisted. She wanted a reaction. She wanted me to break. She wanted me to give her proof that her words had power. But something strange was happening inside me. I suddenly wasn't scared. I wasn't hurt in the way she expected. I wasn't even angry. I was done. Done with trying to prove myself. Done with trying to earn a place. Done with keeping quiet to keep the peace. And my smile, small and steady, told her exactly that. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. What are you smiling for? Did you not hear what I said? I did hear her. Every single word. And for the first time, instead of shrinking, I felt a strange strength spreading through me. A strength I didn't know I had. I placed my fork down carefully, wiping my fingertips on my napkin. And as they all watched me, waiting for me to react, waiting for me to fall apart, I simply said nothing. That seemed to bother her even more. She leaned forward. Say something. Don't just sit there like. But I didn't let her finish. Because something shifted inside me right then. Something final. Something that was going to change everything in that house. I took a slow breath. Then I stood up. And the moment I did, every single person at that table realized. Christmas dinner was about to end very differently than anyone expected. What I did next, that's the part none of them saw coming. And that's where everything truly began. When I stood up from that Christmas dinner table, every chair seemed to creak and every breath in the room seemed to stop. I didn't make a scene, I didn't raise my voice, and I didn't point fingers. I just stood there, feeling this strange mix of calm and sadness settle over me. My stepmother stared at me like she expected me to crumble at any moment, but instead I stayed steady. My dad opened his mouth as if he wanted to speak, but the words didn't come. Maybe he didn't know what to say. Maybe he was scared to say the wrong thing. Or maybe, for the first time, he realized just how deep the cracks in our family had grown. I didn't walk away immediately. I just stood there letting the silence stretch. And in that moment, memories began to rush through my mind. Memories that explained exactly how things had gotten this bad, and why Denise's words didn't hit me the way she expected. They didn't break me because I had already been broken long before this dinner. It started years back, before the Christmas turkeys and fake family photos and forced smiles. Before the long nights where I tried to study while people laughed downstairs without me. Before the whispered comments, the cold stares, the unspoken lines drawn between them and me. It all began the day my dad remarried. My mother had passed when I was young enough that my memories of her were soft and blurry, like faded photos left too long in the sun. I remembered her laughter, warm and gentle. I remembered her humming while she cooked. I remembered how she would put her hand on my back whenever I felt scared. But I didn't remember much else, and my dad didn't talk about her often. Maybe it hurt too much. Maybe he didn't want to reopen wounds. Or maybe Denise didn't like when he mentioned her. I never asked. I just grew up learning to fill in the blanks by myself. When Dad married Denise, I honestly tried to make things work. I tried so hard. I helped with chores, stayed out of trouble, avoided arguments. I thought if I did everything right, she would eventually warm up to me. But instead, it was like my efforts annoyed her even more. She treated me like an unwanted reminder of something she couldn't control, like I didn't fit in her perfect picture of what a family should look like. The kids followed her lead, of course. Marcus was already distant when I met him, glued to his phone and rarely speaking to anyone unless he wanted something. The twins were polite at first, but that didn't last. They were clever, and they learned quickly that being on their mother's side earned them rewards. So that's where they stayed. And me? I became the quiet shadow in the house. The one who got blamed for things I didn't do. The one who cleaned up messes I didn't make. The one who heard whispers behind closed doors. The one who tried to stay invisible just to avoid trouble. The more I tried to fit in, the more I felt like I didn't belong. Dad noticed sometimes, late at night, when he would peek into my room and ask if everything was okay. But I always said yes. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I didn't want to make him choose sides. And part of me hoped things would eventually change on their own. But they didn't. The shift came slowly, almost quietly. Denise's comments went from subtle to sharp. Her tone went from annoyed to hostile. The kids went from ignoring me to rolling their eyes every time I walked into a room. And I learned to survive by shrinking myself so small that maybe, just maybe, they would forget I existed. But Christmas was always different. It was the one time of year when the house felt extra tense. The one time when Denise worked extra hard to make everything look perfect. Perfect tree, perfect decorations, perfect dinner, and anything that disrupted that perfection was unacceptable. I learned quickly that Christmas wasn't about celebration for her. It was about appearance, impressing guests, posting polished pictures, showing the world a family that wasn't real. And every year, the pressure pushed her closer and closer to snapping at me over the smallest things. A dropped spoon. A misplaced ornament. A late greeting. A quiet answer. Everything was a problem. Everything was my fault. But this Christmas was different. This time she didn't just snap. She crushed. Calling me a waste of space, it was like she didn't just want to hurt me. She wanted to erase me. Yet as I stood there, staring at her with that quiet, steady smile, I felt something else. Not anger. Not fear. Not shame. Clarity. I finally saw the whole picture. The years of trying, the years of silence, the years of pretending. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself or apologize for existing. I felt free in a strange, unfamiliar way. But they didn't know that. Not yet. Dad finally spoke, his voice shaky. Honey, please, sit back down. Let's not do this tonight. He wasn't talking to Denise. He was talking to me. Of course he was. That familiar sting hit me, but this time it didn't push me down. It lifted me. I took a slow breath and looked at him. Not with anger, not with blame, just with a quiet understanding. Maybe he had been trapped too. Maybe he had been avoiding conflict for so long that he forgot what peace even felt like. Maybe he was afraid of breaking his new family apart. But I couldn't be the glue anymore. Not for him. Not for anyone. As I stood there, I looked around the room again. The polished table, the shiny ornaments, the untouched food, the forced smiles earlier, the tension hanging thick like fog. I thought about all the holidays before this one. All the tears I cried quietly in my room. All the times I wished things were different. And I realized something else. I didn't want to spend another year like this. Not another Christmas. Not another month. Not another day. Denise watched me, still waiting for me to react, to break down, to apologize. But I didn't. Instead, I let the silence speak for me. Because sometimes silence is louder than screaming. But the real surprise wasn't my calmness. It was what I was planning to do next. Something none of them expected. Something I had never dared to do before. Something that would change everything, not just for me but for the entire house. And as I slowly reached for the chair, not to sit, but to push it back, I saw the first flicker of fear cross Denise's face. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know what. And the truth was, neither did I. Not yet. But I was about to find out. And so were they. The moment I pushed my chair back, the scrape against the wooden floor echoed through the room like a warning. Denise flinched, her fingers tightening around the serving tray she had been holding. Marcus looked up from his phone, his smirk fading as he noticed the shift in the air. Even the twins, Eva and Aaron, paused mid-whisper, their eyes wide as if they were watching a scene they weren't supposed to witness. My dad's hand hovered near the turkey knife, frozen in indecision. No one spoke. No one moved. And for the first time that evening I felt like I had a choice. A real choice, and it scared me more than I had expected. For years, I had lived in this house carefully, like a ghost gliding between walls, trying not to disturb anything or anyone. Every comment Denise made, every roll of the twins' eyes, every sigh Marcus threw my way had been like little cuts I learned to ignore. I had learned to survive in silence. But that silence had a price. And tonight, standing in the middle of the dining room, I realized I was ready to pay a different kind of price. Denise's voice cut through the quiet like ice. What are you doing? Sit down this instant. She wasn't angry in a normal way, her voice trembled with something deeper, something personal. It was like my calm, my refusal to react, was shattering some illusion she had about control. I'm standing, I said softly. My voice didn't shake. It wasn't loud. It was just firm. Standing? For what? To make me look bad? She snapped. Her face turned red, and for a moment I saw the anger behind her carefully curated exterior. But there was something else too, something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. Not fear of me exactly, but fear that I was no longer going to play by her rules. I realized in that moment that the main conflict wasn't just between us. It wasn't just Denise hating me or me feeling out of place. It was the dynamic our entire family had fallen into. The way power and attention were divided, the way people were expected to fit into roles, and the way silence had been used as a weapon for years. Everyone in that room had a stake in it. Everyone had a perspective. Dad looked torn. He wanted to say something, but every time he opened his mouth, Denise's presence seemed to silence him. I knew he loved me, but he had been trapped between loyalty to me and loyalty to his new family. He had spent so long trying to protect us all that he had lost sight of who he was protecting, and who he was ignoring. Marcus, of course, didn't understand any of this. He just saw me as an obstacle, someone who ruined his comfort. He hadn't realized that this was bigger than a teenage rivalry. But the twins, Eva and Aaron, were more perceptive. Their eyes flicked between Denise and me, and I could see the confusion in them. They were starting to notice the cracks, the tension, and maybe, just maybe, they were realizing that the rules in this house weren't as unshakable as they had been told. I took a deep breath. I wanted to say something to explain myself, but I realized words weren't enough. Not tonight. Actions mattered more. I slowly began to walk around the table, not aggressively, not angrily, just deliberately, letting each step echo my presence. Each footfall seemed to draw a reaction. Denise straightened, her hands gripping the tray so tightly that I worried she might drop it. Marcus looked up fully this time, phone abandoned, smirk replaced by a hint of alarm. The twins leaned forward slightly, curiosity shining in their eyes. As I moved, I thought about my own feelings, the years of quiet pain. I thought about the holidays I had spent pretending to be fine while my insides ached. I thought about the nights I had cried quietly, the lunches I had eaten alone, the times I had been blamed unfairly. All of that had led to this moment. And I realized I didn't want to just react anymore, I wanted to take control. Not to hurt anyone but to finally stand in my own truth. Denise tried to interrupt. "Stop this nonsense. Sit down." But her voice lacked the authority it once had over me. I ignored it. I moved to the other side of the table, past the twins, past Marcus, past Dad, and for a moment the room felt suspended in time. It was as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for me to falter. Waiting for me to fall into the pattern we had all been trapped in for years. And then I realized something else. This conflict wasn't just about me and Denise. It was about recognition. About being seen. About being acknowledged as someone who mattered. For years, my existence had been minimized, dismissed, and labeled a problem. That label had nothing to do with who I was. It was about fear, control, and broken expectations. Tonight, I was reclaiming a piece of myself by refusing to accept it any longer. Dad finally spoke, his voice low and tense. Maybe we should talk later, not now. Let's just eat." "No," I said quietly but firmly. "Not yet." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Denise's lips pressed together, and for a moment, I saw her hesitate. She had never expected me to confront her in this way, not without tears, not with shouting, not with begging. And that hesitation, it was powerful. Marcus whispered, half to himself, "What is she doing?" Eva and Aaron exchanged a glance, one that told me they were both scared and intrigued. They were starting to question the rules they had followed blindly for years. And maybe, just maybe, they were seeing me differently now, not as the quiet outsider but as someone who could stand on her own. I could feel the tension in the room building, thick and heavy. Every person was watching, waiting, reacting. Every breath felt like a countdown to something bigger. And I realized that the conflict tonight wasn't going to resolve in polite conversation. It wasn't going to disappear with a smile or a nod. It was deeper, rooted in years of misunderstanding, resentment, and fear. I looked at Denise again, and for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of her. I didn't feel anger. I felt determination. Not the kind that wanted to win a fight, but the kind that wanted to be heard. That wanted to exist without apology. That wanted a family, not a battlefield. And I knew the rest of the night could go in any direction. It could erupt in chaos, or it could slowly begin to shift into something new. But one thing was certain, I was no longer going to be silent. I was no longer going to shrink. I was no longer going to accept being dismissed or belittled. As I stood there, the dining room seemed to stretch larger than I had ever noticed before. The ornaments glimmered, but they no longer seemed to shine at Denise's command. The lights twinkled, but they no longer dimmed my presence. I realized that the room itself had been a stage, one where roles had been assigned without my consent. And now, for the first time, I had the power to step into the role I wanted. Denise's hand finally relaxed a little, but her eyes were sharp. She knew she was losing control, even if she didn't admit it. Dad still looked uncertain, caught between wanting peace and wanting fairness. The twins were alert, sensing change. Marcus looked frustrated, realizing this wasn't a game he could control. And I felt the rush of something I hadn't felt in years, agency. And then, just as I was about to speak, the doorbell rang. No one moved. Not immediately. Not until the chime sounded again, louder this time. The timing couldn't have been worse, or maybe it was perfect. Because it was about to add a whole new layer to the tension in that room. A new element that no one was ready for. A new mystery that could change everything that had been frozen in place for years. I looked around at everyone's faces, their expressions a mix of curiosity, fear, and confusion. And I realized, just like I had taken my first stand tonight, whatever or whoever was at that door was going to force all of us to face the reality we had been avoiding for far too long. Denise flinched, Dad tensed, the twins whispered, Marcus groaned, and I didn't know yet whether I should feel excitement or dread. But I knew one thing. The story of this Christmas dinner, the story of who I was in this family, wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And whatever came next, I knew it was going to change everything. The doorbell rang again, sharp and insistent, and it sliced through the tension like a knife. Everyone froze. Denise's face twisted with irritation. Dad's hands hovered near the table as if he might run to answer it, and Marcus groaned, throwing himself back into his chair in defeat. The twins held their breath, wide-eyed, as if the sound alone could change the course of the night. I stayed where I was, standing tall in the center of the room, my heart pounding. Somehow, I already knew that whoever, or whatever, was behind that door would push this night to its breaking point. Denise muttered under her breath, "Who could it be at this hour? This is ridiculous." Her voice was tense, almost like she was trying to cover up her unease. I could see it in her hands, they trembled just slightly as she smoothed her dress. That small movement told me more than words ever could. She didn't want to face this unknown. She didn't want to lose control, but the universe seemed intent on challenging her. Dad finally stepped toward the door, but he paused halfway, glancing at me. His eyes searched mine, maybe for guidance, maybe for reassurance. I gave him a small, steady nod, the kind that silently said, "Go ahead. Face it. Whatever it is, we'll handle it." Marcus rolled his eyes, trying to look bored, but the twitch in his jaw betrayed him. Even he could sense the weight of the moment. Eva and Aaron whispered to each other, exchanging looks that said one thing: this could get real messy really fast. Dad's hand touched the doorknob, and I felt the room hold its collective breath. I noticed how quiet it had become. No music, no ticking clocks, just the faint hum of the heater in the corner. Every second stretched like elastic, tightening the tension until it felt like the walls themselves were pressing in on us. When he finally opened the door, the hallway light spilled into the room, casting long shadows across the dining table. And standing there, framed in the doorway, was someone I hadn't seen in years. My chest tightened. I knew that face. I hadn't seen them since everything in my life had started to feel upside down. Denise gasped, stepping back instinctively. What are you doing here?" Her voice was sharp, but there was a tremor beneath it, a mix of surprise and fear. The person in the doorway didn't answer immediately. They just looked at all of us, their eyes sweeping across the room, lingering on me just long enough to make my stomach drop. For a moment it felt like time stopped again. Their voice caught, hesitant but firm. "I need to talk to her." And before anyone could react, they stepped fully into the room, locking eyes with me. Dad stiffened, Marcus leaned forward, and the twins whispered frantically. Denise's mouth opened, then closed, as though she had lost her ability to form words. My heart raced faster, but I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply held their gaze, and in that instant I knew, this was the moment everything could change. The tension was suffocating. You could practically feel the electricity in the air. Every eye in the room followed the person's next move. I could see Denise trying to regain control, her hands clenching at her sides. Marcus was muttering under his breath, probably cursing his bad luck. The twins were gripping each other's hands, and Dad looked like he wanted to step in but didn't know how. The person took a slow step closer to me, and I could hear their voice tremble slightly, even though it was steady. "It's been too long," they said softly, almost like a warning. "I can't leave it like this anymore." Denise's eyes narrowed. "You're not welcome here," she said sharply, but her voice lacked the authority it once had. She was trying, but I could see through it. She was rattled. "I'm not here for you," the visitor said, their eyes now locked completely on mine. "I'm here for her." And in that moment something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about the insults, the silences, or the constant feeling of being unwanted. This was about the truth finally being forced into the open. I took a step forward, my pulse hammering in my ears. Denise flinched again, retreating slightly. Dad's hand brushed the table as he leaned forward, trying to anticipate what might happen next. Marcus's phone clattered to the floor as he muttered, "This is getting out of hand." The twins were silent now, staring with wide eyes, sensing the storm about to hit. The visitor's gaze softened slightly as they looked at me, and for a moment, I felt the weight of all the years lift, just a little. But that relief didn't last because I knew what this meant. Every secret, every truth, every piece of the past that had been buried was about to come forward. And if Denise thought she could control the narrative tonight, she was about to realize just how powerless she really was. The room seemed to shrink around us. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, and I knew everyone else could feel it too. Denise's voice shook as she tried to assert control. "If you think," she began, but the visitor raised a hand, cutting her off. "No," they said firmly. "This is not up for debate." And then, just like that, the room became a battlefield of unspoken truths, long-held grudges, and unacknowledged feelings. Every glance, every movement, every breath was charged with tension. The air was heavy, thick with anticipation. No one knew what would happen next, not really. I felt a strange sense of calm amid the storm. I had spent so many years preparing for moments like this without even realizing it. And now, standing there, I understood that the confrontation I had been avoiding my entire life was finally here. But even though I knew it was coming, I didn't know how it would end, or if it would end at all. Denise's face was pale now, a mix of anger and fear. Dad looked torn, frozen between protecting me and keeping the peace. Marcus looked frustrated, probably wishing he could escape. The twins were silent, their eyes glued to the unfolding drama. And me? I felt the tension coil tight inside me, ready to spring, but I didn't move, not yet. The visitor took another step forward. Everything you've been hiding, everything you've been pretending, it ends tonight, they said quietly, yet every word cut through the room like glass. Denise's hands shook at her sides, and I realized she knew this confrontation would not be easy. Not for her. Not for Dad. Not for me. And certainly not for the kids, who were finally starting to see the cracks in the world they had taken for granted. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing, knowing that in the next few moments, everything would come to a head. Whatever was about to happen would change the balance in the room forever. And no one, was ready for the truth that was about to surface. The visitor paused, and the silence that followed was unbearable. Every eye in the room followed them, every muscle tensed, every heart seemed to stop for a second. And in that pause I realized something crucial: nothing tonight would be the same again. And then, just as the tension reached its peak, the visitor opened their mouth, and the words they were about to say promised to shatter the fragile calm we had been clinging to for so long. The visitor's eyes met mine, sharp and unwavering, and for a moment, I felt like the rest of the room had disappeared. Every breath, every heartbeat, every flicker of the Christmas lights seemed to focus entirely on that one moment. And then, in a voice that was low but forceful, they said words that made my stomach twist. "You don't know the half of it," they said. "Not about this family. Not about tonight. Not about what's been going on behind closed doors." Denise's face went pale, and her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter behind her. Dad stepped closer, his voice rising slightly. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" The visitor didn't answer him. Instead, their gaze flicked to Denise, and I could see something in their expression that I hadn't noticed before. Accusation, yes, but also fear. They knew exactly what they were about to reveal, and it was going to shake the very foundation of this house. "I came back because things have gone too far," they continued, stepping closer into the living room. "All the lies, all the hiding, all the pretending, it ends tonight. And if you think this is just about words at the table, you're wrong. It's much bigger than that." Marcus finally looked up from the floor where his phone had slipped and frowned. "What are you even talking about? Who is this?" His voice was defensive, but I could see that he was nervous too. He had no idea what was coming. Eva and Aaron exchanged glances, their hands clenching each other tightly. The twins had been too young to remember some of the earlier events, but now even they could sense that the night had shifted into something dangerous, something volatile. Denise took a step forward, trying to assert control. "I don't know who you think you are, but you have no right to speak to my family this way." Her voice trembled slightly, though, betraying the confidence she had been trying to hold onto all night. The visitors shook their heads slowly. "I do have a right," they said. "And you've been hiding something from everyone for years. Not just small secrets, not just lies at dinner. Real things. Dangerous things. Things that explain why this family has never been whole." My chest tightened. My pulse raced. Something inside me told me this wasn't just about Denise and her anger anymore. This was about all of us. About the truth we had been avoiding. About the skeletons in the closet that no one wanted to face. Dad stepped forward, his hands raised as if to calm everyone. Okay, slow down. Let's talk. Just explain what you mean." The visitor's eyes locked with mine again, and I noticed a flicker of recognition, like we shared a secret only we understood. "You're going to want to listen to this," they said quietly. "Because what I'm about to tell you changes everything you think you know. And it starts with Denise." Denise's face went rigid. Her fingers dug into the edge of the counter as if she could anchor herself against the storm that was about to hit. "Stop this right now," she said, her voice low but sharp. "Don't you dare bring up old things. Not here. Not tonight." But the visitor didn't back down. "No, it has to be now," they said firmly. "You've lied about your past. You've lied about my family. And the longer you hide it, the worse it's going to get." At that moment, I realized the stakes had escalated far beyond the insults at the dinner table. This wasn't just about Denise yelling at me anymore, or about being a waste of space. This was about secrets that had festered for years, about truths that could destroy relationships and reveal the real dynamics in the family. Marcus whispered almost to himself, "This is insane," but he was glued to every word. Even he knew that something big was happening. The twins leaned forward, their curiosity overcoming their fear. "What do you mean, dangerous things?" Eva asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The visitor took a deep breath. "I mean that there are people in this house, people you trust, who have been keeping the wrong secrets. And tonight the truth comes out. Starting with a choice. A choice that will change everything." Denise's eyes widened and I could see the panic creeping in. She was no longer in control. For the first time all night her confident, polished demeanor cracked. And I realized that her anger, her shouting, and her insults had been a shield, one she had built to hide her own fear. Dad stepped closer to me, his hand brushing my shoulder. I don't know if this is a good idea," he murmured, but I could feel the uncertainty in his tone. Even he wasn't prepared for what was about to unfold. The visitor moved closer, their presence commanding attention. "Everyone in this room needs to understand something," they said. "The story you've been told, the life you've been living, it's only part of the truth. And if you think tonight ends at the table, you're wrong. It's just the beginning." Marcus' eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, beginning? Beginning of what?" "I mean that the family you think you know, the family you think is safe, is about to be exposed," the visitor said, their voice steady but intense. "And some of you may not like what you hear. Some of you may realize you've been living a lie. But hiding it any longer will only make it worse. And Denise, you've already seen the first sign tonight. But this is bigger than just words." Denise's face went pale and she whispered almost to herself, "No, no, it can't be." I felt my pulse race even faster. I knew this was going to be a turning point. Everything that had been simmering, resentment, frustration, fear, secrets, was about to explode. Every member of the family was teetering on the edge of revelation, and I could sense that once the next words came, there would be no going back. The visitor stepped closer to me, lowering their voice. "Are you ready to hear it?" I nodded slowly, feeling a strange mix of fear and anticipation. The room held its breath again. The tension was unbearable. Every eye was on us, every muscle was taut, and every heartbeat seemed synchronized with the storm building in the room. And then the visitor opened their mouth, ready to reveal something that would shatter the fragile balance of the evening, something that would push the family to the edge, and something that no one, least of all Denise, was prepared for. The night had shifted, the stakes had risen, and the climax was drawing near. Everything we had avoided, everything we had hidden, and everything we had feared was about to collide. And none of us would ever see Christmas dinner the same way again. The visitor took a deep breath and the room went completely silent. Every person's eyes were locked on them, waiting for the revelation that would change everything. Denise's hands shook at her sides, Marcus sat up straighter, the twins leaned forward, and even Dad seemed frozen in place. My chest tightened, and for the first time, I felt the weight of all the years crashing down in one moment. "It's time you all know the truth," the visitor said. "Denise hasn't just been angry at me because of petty things at the table, she's been hiding something much bigger. Something that affects all of us." Denise's face went pale, her lips pressed together as if she could stop the words from coming out. But the visitor continued. "She's been controlling this family in ways you don't realize. Dad isn't the only one making decisions. For years, Denise has been manipulating the household finances, the kids' schedules, even how Dad perceives me. And tonight I found proof." The visitor reached into their coat and pulled out a small envelope, holding it up so everyone could see. Dad's eyes widened. Marcus looked confused. Eva and Aaron gasped quietly. Denise's mouth opened and closed like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "This," the visitor said, placing the envelope carefully on the table in front of Denise, "is all the evidence of how she's been trying to control everything behind the scenes. Emails, messages, financial records, everything. And it explains why the family has never felt truly connected. Why everything has felt forced." Denise's face went from shock to fury. "You have no right," she yelled, slapping her hand against the table. "This is private. You can't." "Yes, I can," the visitor said calmly. "Because the truth is bigger than your anger. The truth is about making sure everyone in this family finally sees what's real and what's not. And now it's out." Dad took a step forward, looking at Denise with a mix of betrayal and sadness. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Denise's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. Her silence spoke volumes. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions: relief, anger, validation, and finally freedom. For years, I had been treated like a burden, like a waste of space. But now, the lies that had justified her anger were exposed. And for the first time I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. Marcus finally spoke, voice shaky. "So, all this time she's been manipulating everything?" "Yes," the visitor said firmly. "And now you have to decide what to do with the truth. Do you let it control you or do you finally break free?" Denise sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Dad put a hand on her shoulder, uncertain, trying to find some balance between anger, disappointment, and compassion. The twins just stared at me, their eyes wide, as if they had just seen a side of our family they had never understood before. I took a deep breath, the weight of years finally lifting slightly. "It's over," I said softly but with conviction. "No more pretending. No more hiding. We face the truth and we move forward, together or not." The visitor nodded, a small, approving smile on their face. "Exactly. And I'm here to make sure it happens." For a moment, the room seemed to exhale. The tension hung, but it shifted from anger to something else, possibility. I could feel it. Dad finally spoke, his voice firm but gentle. "We have a lot to work through, but I want this family to be honest. I want us to be real." Denise looked up slowly, tears streaking her cheeks. Her voice was quiet now, broken. I didn't know it had gone this far. I only wanted to hold things together." "By controlling everyone?" the visitor asked, voice calm but sharp. Denise flinched. No answer. The silence was heavy, but it finally allowed the truth to settle in the room. Just as I felt a small sense of closure, the visitor's phone buzzed. They glanced at it and their expression changed suddenly, eyes wide, jaw tightening. "What is it?" Dad asked, concerned. The visitor's voice dropped to a whisper, almost to themselves. This can't be happening now. "What is it?" I pressed, sensing the tension spike again. The visitor turned to all of us, their eyes serious. "It's not just Denise. There's something else. Something that none of us expected. And it's connected to this family in ways we can't ignore. We need to act fast." Denise looked at the visitor, panic spreading across her face. Marcus straightened, now fully alert. The twins clutched each other's hands and Dad's expression shifted from cautious hope to sharp concern. I felt my heart race faster than ever. The main conflict, the lies, the manipulation, the years of tension, had been revealed. Yet now, a new threat loomed over us, one that none of us had anticipated. The visitor's hand tightened around the phone. "We're not safe until we deal with this. And tonight, it changes everything again." The room froze. Every person in it realized that the night was far from over. The Christmas dinner, the shouting, the insults, all of it had been just the beginning. Now the stakes had risen higher than any of us could have imagined, and the real challenge was only just beginning. And as I looked at everyone, Denise, Dad, Marcus, the twins, and the visitor, I understood something vital. The family we thought we knew was on the edge of a complete transformation. The lies were gone, but the surprises were far from over. The tension in the room thickened, hearts pounded, and I realized this was the turning point. One moment could decide everything, the trust, the relationships, the very future of this family. And then, in that charged silence, the visitor whispered one final sentence that sent a chill down my spine. "You all need to see who's really been watching, and it's not just us in this room." The visitor's words hung in the air like a shadow, and for a moment no one moved. Denise's hands shook, Dad's jaw tightened, Marcus's phone slipped to the floor unnoticed, and the twins held each other's hands so tightly their knuckles were white. I took a slow, steadying breath and realized that what had begun as an ordinary, tense Christmas dinner had become the most pivotal night of our lives. The visitor's phone buzzed again, and this time they looked at it with urgency. "It's happening faster than I expected," they said. "There are people outside, watching. And they've known everything all along." Denise's face turned ghostly pale. "Watching? Who would?" She stopped herself, fear overtaking anger. Dad took a deep breath and tried to regain control. "Okay, we need to calm down and think. Whoever this is, whoever's been watching, we deal with it together. We've faced the truth already. We can handle this too." Marcus muttered something under his breath, but I saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. He had spent years thinking this was a simple world of power and convenience, and now he was learning firsthand that real life didn't operate that way. Eva and Aaron still clung to each other, whispering quietly. "Are we in trouble?" Aaron asked, her voice tiny, almost a squeak. I knelt slightly to look them in the eyes. "We're going to be okay," I said softly. "We've faced the truth tonight and we're stronger because of it. That's what matters." The visitor nodded at me as if silently agreeing that the key to surviving this wasn't just revealing secrets. It was keeping the family united even in chaos. We need to move quickly, they said. But first, everyone has to understand one thing. The lies we've uncovered tonight, about Denise, about hidden manipulation, about control, they can't define us anymore. The only thing that can define us now is what we choose to do next. Denise's face was pale, and for the first time she seemed smaller than I had ever seen her. The polished confidence she usually carried had completely melted. I never meant for any of this, she whispered. I only wanted to make everything perfect. I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. Perfection doesn't mean control. It doesn't mean making everyone else feel small so you can feel big. Tonight you see the truth and maybe it hurts, but it's also a chance to start over. Dad's eyes softened as he looked between us. We've all made mistakes, he said. And we've all been hurt in ways we didn't understand. But maybe tonight is the moment we stop blaming and start building something real. Marcus, surprisingly, spoke up next. So, what do we do now? His usual sarcasm was gone, replaced by seriousness. I could see that the chaos of the night had changed him in ways he didn't yet understand. The visitor looked around the room. We face this together. We acknowledge what's been hidden, and we decide how to move forward. No more pretending. No more secrets. And if anyone outside is watching, we show them that we're stronger than they think. Denise swallowed hard. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, voice trembling. I placed a hand gently on her arm. You can. And so can we all. But first we need honesty. From everyone. No more hiding. No more fear. That's the only way this family will survive, really survive. The visitor nodded approvingly. Good. That's the first step. We all sat down slowly around the table. The food was still there, untouched, but no one cared about turkey or mashed potatoes anymore. The table had become a symbol, a place of confrontation, revelation, and now reconciliation. We began to speak honestly one by one. Dad admitted he had avoided conflict for years to keep peace but realized it had only allowed control and fear to grow. Marcus admitted that he had judged me unfairly, assuming that I didn't care about the family when in truth, I had spent years trying to survive in silence. The twins shared small confessions about what they had noticed but never understood fully. Denise finally spoke, voice small but sincere. She admitted that she had tried to control everything because she was afraid. Afraid of losing Dad, afraid of losing the family she wanted to protect, and afraid that if she showed vulnerability she would be seen as weak. Her confession was raw and honest, and for the first time I didn't see her as an enemy, I saw her as someone flawed, scared, and human. When the visitor spoke again it was almost gentle. This doesn't erase the past, they said. But it opens a door to the future. It's up to you how you walk through it. The room felt lighter somehow. Tension was still there, yes, but it had transformed from fear into understanding. We were a family in the truest sense, not perfect, not polished, but real. For the first time I felt like I belonged. Not because anyone had given me permission but because I had finally claimed my place. And then, just when we thought the night could finally settle, the visitor's phone buzzed again. They looked at it, eyes widening. There's something else, they said. I thought this would be the only surprise tonight, but it seems we're not done yet. Everyone froze. Dad's hand tightened around the chair. Denise's eyes widened in panic. Marcus groaned. The twins squeezed each other's hands. The visitor showed us the screen. A video had been sent to their phone, footage from outside the house showing someone standing near the windows watching our Christmas dinner, recording everything. The figure was shadowy, almost unrecognizable, but their presence was undeniable. They've been observing us, the visitor said quietly. Not just tonight, for a long time. And now they know the truth too. For a moment, we all sat in stunned silence. The threat was real, but strangely, it didn't feel like the kind of fear that paralyzes. It was a reminder that we had survived this night, faced the truth, and grown stronger. Whoever had been watching didn't know that we were no longer hiding, no longer pretending. I looked around at my family. Denise, vulnerable and raw, yet ready to change. Dad, cautious but supportive. Marcus, uneasy but learning responsibility. The twins, wide-eyed but aware. And the visitor who had guided us through the storm. For the first time, I realized that this chaotic, painful, messy family was capable of something powerful. Honesty, resilience, and unity. The visitor smiled faintly. This is your moment. You've faced lies, confrontation, and fear. Now you decide how to move forward. And remember, the real strength of a family isn't in perfection, it's in facing the truth together. Denise finally spoke again, quieter now, sincere. I want to try. I want to be better. For all of you. For me. Dad nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. We'll do it together. One step at a time. Marcus rolled his eyes but laughed softly, the tension in his shoulders easing. Fine. But I get first choice on dessert, he joked, and even the twins giggled. I looked at everyone and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the false hope of pretending everything was perfect, but the real, steady kind that comes from truth and connection. As the night slowly settled, we didn't fix everything. There were still challenges ahead, secrets to untangle and trust to rebuild. But for the first time, we had taken the steps to face those challenges honestly. We had confronted the conflict, revealed the truths, and discovered that the bonds of family could endure even the harshest revelations. And just as we were beginning to laugh softly, the visitor's phone buzzed one last time. They looked at it, a small, surprised smile on their face. Well, they said, it seems one final surprise has arrived. But that is a story for another Christmas. The room filled with a quiet laughter, tentative but genuine, as the tension finally lifted. The past had been faced. The conflicts had been confronted. And though the future was still unknown, for the first time, we were ready to face it, together. That Christmas I realized something important. Families aren't defined by perfection, control, or appearances. They're defined by the courage to face the truth, the willingness to forgive, and the strength to stay connected even when everything seems impossible. And in that moment I knew, no matter what came next, I would never again let anyone make me feel like I was a waste of space. Because I belonged. Not because anyone said so, but because I had finally chosen to stand, to speak, and to exist fully in my own truth. That night, Christmas dinner became more than just a meal. It became the turning point for a family that had been fractured by secrets, misunderstandings, and fear. And as the lights twinkled softly around us, I finally understood that the strongest families aren't perfect, they're real.